I can introduce everyone here, but I'm going to let them do themselves the honor. But honestly, each one of these people here is a rock star in his own little ecosystem, or big ecosystem. So we're going to start with Jay from Business Insider.
I'm Jay from Business Insider. Jay Yarrow, deputy editor of Business Insider, running our technology section.
The best tweets on Twitter, like number one. Like honestly, if I tell you to follow one person, it would be Jay Yarrow, honestly. Even before. Jay Yarrow.
Yeah, Jayarrow.
Jay Yarrow. Honestly, the funniest tweets on Twitter.
Thank you, Hill. Ari Zoldan, CEO of Quantum Networks, also a technology contributor expert for CNN, Fox, NBC, and some of the other networks. I'm happy to be here. I always feel good also after speaking to Hill. He always makes me feel good. He makes everyone feel good. So we have an event tonight, post the great Zula Summit from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. I'm hosting an event panel. There's about 17 panelists here. Or some panelists will be here from ABC, CNN, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and CNN. And it's more of a brick and mortar panel focused on how companies can break into traditional media. So we invite everyone to attend.
Hi, I'm Jack Mark, and my claim to fame is that my daughter works for Zula. I'm an entrepreneur, and I provide messaging, secure messaging for hospitals in the United States. We started out in England, and I've been having a great time doing messaging for the enterprise, which is not reached the tipping point yet, but it's hopefully going to get there one of these days.
We had a lot of speakers speak about tech, geeky things today, but I don't know if anybody really thought about the need for streamlined communication in the medical world. You know, doctors need to diagnose, need to release patients from the hospital, need to do all sorts of things over messaging. And my understanding is that you've completely revolutionized that world, which is really super awesome to have you representing an entire world here at Zula Summit, so thank you.
It's hard to follow behind that. Okay. Danny Schultz, co-founder, managing director at Gotham Ventures. We are a seed and early stage venture capital fund based here in New York. Focus a lot on Israeli startups as well. And I guess just to get the ball rolling, I'll say that we have invested both in enterprise, IM, DFJ, our partner on the West Coast, are obviously the early first investors in Hotmail. And we've looked at a lot of things and turned a lot of things down, but had a lot of thoughts. So let's see if we can hopefully parse some stuff.
All right, so keep the microphone. We're gonna. It's very important that it wants to be a very casual, open conversation. So feel free at any point to either shoot me a question in Zula in space or raise your hand. It's important. I want it to be a discussion, not like a monologue. So I'm just gonna start off with as a team member, right? Each one of you guys is an entrepreneur or investor, whatever it is, but also part of the team. And so I want to know what your pain points are as a team member in your day-to-day communications. What do you see in terms of the tools that you use, and how can we improve on that? Is really what I want to know.
Okay, so I did this question. So what do I use? I have Slack.
It's good. It's all good. So wonderful.
Open. We have instant messaging, where you have Google Chat, all that. You have email. You have Twitter, DMs. What else?
You use this stuff in a business context.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm a journalist.
And I pitch you over DM all the time.
Right, exactly. You pitch over DM, get email. So for me, the biggest pain point is email. I don't know if there's much you can do about it. A lot of people look at email as this huge problem that needs to be solved. I think the product of email is okay. So Google just came out with Inbox, and I tried Inbox, and I didn't find it was very helpful because it would sort of pre-sort everything, and you would miss a lot of messages. There's a reason there's a stream and a flow to email, and you can just check through it. My theory, which I've said many times on Twitter, on how to cure email is if you haven't read the message after a week or 3 days, it just gets deleted automatically. And then you wouldn't have to worry about it. That's the biggest pain point for me, is just going through and clicking unread and hitting delete. But
I feel like email was invented to increase productivity, and it's done the exact opposite.
well, I didn't say it's pretty productive because of email.
I mean, I wake up in the morning, sometimes hundreds, sometimes thousands of emails. There's no way to effectively go through them without wasting hours of your time.
So just to comment on that, I think that I think we're still at the genesis in terms of email applications. I don't think we've scratched the surface, because I agree, I wake up also all the 800 or 900 emails that I have to go through. 3/4 of them I just don't respond to. And I've tried Boomerang, I've tried Write Inbox, I've tried all these different follow-up applications. And for one reason or another, they're just not sticky, and I end up having the same problem. And talk about, and I'd love to get everyone's opinion here as well, if anybody has a good solution out there. But in terms of uniform communications, I think the issue is, I think it's a bigger issue. Everybody likes a different app, they like a different application. So how do you get your team, and me and my partner Eitan, we deal with this all the time. Is it FreeCamp? Is it Basecamp? Do we use Google Drive? Do we use Dropbox? And the issue is when we all sit around and we collaborate about which tools we're going to use, and everybody has another one, we end up leaving the meeting and really didn't accomplish anything. So those are some challenges, at least, that we're facing on a day-to-day basis in terms of both managerial and then getting also our employees to actually stick to a specific application.
I feel like a good word to describe this space right now is fragmentation. There's a tremendous amount of fragmentation. I think, again, as told Jay before, in the consumer space, there's owners. There's a few big players that have billions of users, right? Whether it's WhatsApp, Facebook Messenger, whatever it is. When it comes to Teams, again, with all due respect to Slack, they're great. It's great. At the end of the day, we asked before how many people in this room, like one person raised their hand in Slack. So while yes, there was over $1 billion, it's great. And again, not literally, but this mainstream, corporate team, do they use Slack or HipChat? They don't. No one's really owned it, right? It's still this big fragmentation that someone needs to own. And so that's really the goal of someone. Someone has to go and take that.
Good.
So my biggest challenge is somebody noticed that I was just looking. I have 2,179 unread emails. So she said she was going to email me, and I said, well,
Don't.
So, but the truth of the matter is that in a business sense, email is still my master because it's the lowest common denominator that everybody. So what I do is I am only on my PC though. It doesn't work on a Mac. All my emails get archived every 3 months, but it goes onto my local hard drive, and I can search that instantaneously. And I have a history, so anybody loses anything in the company, they still ask me to find it, and I go to search it, and I can go search for the last 7 years of.
How do you do that? What tool do you use to archive every month?
It just,
It's
just automatic, it archives it to your hard drive. It's a standard archiving tool that comes with Outlook. But the only way to find anything is to have it on your local drive, and then you search it and you find it. I find anything that anybody lost in the last 3 years. So my biggest problem, though, is that as we have Dropbox and all the other ways of communicating, there's a lot of information that's not collected in my email, and how do I then find stuff that people communicate via apps to me? So that's my biggest challenge.
I think everyone in this room can relate to, if someone sent me a file, you find that file 3 months from now. Where did they send it? Dropbox, Skype, email, GChat, etc. It's a real pain. But that's a really interesting thing you archive for 3 months. I try that. You have some good thoughts on this, I can tell.
No, we're a small team, so but we worked with sort of an extended group of partners out in the valley and elsewhere. And I would, echo what was just said. I think email is underappreciated. I think there are a lot of things you can do with Gmail. There's never going to be a perfect answer because I'm really not sure we as people in an atomic world were built with the amount of digital information that's coming at us. So everything is going to be an attempt to sort and organize and improve. I think for me, the biggest pain point, I think for our organization, the biggest pain point is not in the messaging. I think scheduling is really a critical area. And I just heard a great little presentation on this by, I can't remember the name of the CEO, but a company downtown, we did not back him, but it's called X.AI, you may be familiar with. And, he's going after a big problem, which is automating, creating a bot for scheduling. but.
So is this just scheduling meetings, you
Yes.
mean?
Yes, yes. And I think there are other areas that are bottlenecks. We're users of Relate and Box. I suppose Dropbox, Box is DFJ company, so we use Box. But Relate IQ is very good. And I happen to love, and I know most people who use it love Refresh.io, because I think context and information and discovery and personalizing who you are going to be with is kind of echoes a statement made earlier, I think, by LinkedIn guy, maybe by Aaron, about, even in a workplace, there's you combine personal and professional.
But you just named yourself right now 4 tools.
Yeah, but there's a number of tools that you can use satisfactorily for different things. I think the real missing piece, if you ask me, and I can use all of those efficiently. And remember, Gmail is a good sorter and a good search platform. I mean, it's once you start going beyond that and above that, like I use one IM. I'm not using several different IMs. I think the problem is when you're using multiple apps for the same functionality. That becomes a problem. I think one of you mentioned that this issue. I think you said somebody likes this app versus liking that app.
So I hear what you're saying, and I hear that, claim that what we're trying to do is like, okay, I'm okay using 15 tools because each thing does its own thing. I don't need one tool. And while I understand not 15, all right, 10. Right? You named 4, but think about it. You're talking about Dropbox and email. You're approaching the 10. Again, who might disagree with you, but I think that there's a problem there.
Just a guy.
More experience driving by a lot. But I still think that there's the famous story with Henry Ford, right? Want faster horses. I feel like there's something wrong for using 10 tools. While you might be used to this behavior, I think objectively, if we take a step back, it's somewhat primitive. Objectively speaking, to use 10 tools to just talk.
No, it is. Look, I think the most important thing about any new app out there and in getting the most out of all these apps is I don't mind using multiple apps. I think the key is the simplicity, and somebody else said this earlier, the simplicity with which you can engage that app. And I think of the velocity of task completion. Is there any connection between Uber and autocorrect? Yes, in my view. The connection between Uber and autocorrect when you type is that in anything we do, what is the feeling you get when you are typing something and you don't have to worry about the typing? It's completing the task. The velocity of task completion is something that we as consumers and consumers in the enterprise get an enormous amount of satisfaction from. Without autocorrect, by the way, there wouldn't be so many other of these things that we're talking about, right? But number 2 is Uber is about velocity of task completion. The satisfaction you get from doing that thing that always has been a pain in the butt. And that's what messaging, we're messaging a driver when we use Uber, and it's happening fast and efficiently. So simplicity, I'll use more apps if they're simple and easy and give me a boost when I get it
need
done.
that you have.
Yeah, it gives me a charge when you get it done. I mean, who's used Uber and has 3 minutes?
Actually, I don't mind. I'd like to push back. So I happen to agree with some of the points. But what I would say is that I don't think there's ever going to be a real unified solution. I think we're going to keep chasing the solution. We're going to keep chasing the solution because as we continue to find solutions, we're hit with more data, more photos, more information. So you're constantly trying to find new and updated applications to try to put a Band-Aid on a solution. And I don't want to go backwards to quote unquote a prehistoric age, but there still is something, and sort of this may defeat the purpose here, but the person driving the content, the person that's receiving the emails, I think needs to be obviously organized. And I think, we're constantly looking.
2013.
Yeah, I know. I'm a bit old school, but there's this notion that, oh, this application is going to solve my problems. I've never seen that, and I don't think it ever will.
Well, I beg to differ. But let's talk a little bit of enterprise, because you mentioned enterprise, and obviously, we've talked about consumer, and enterprise is really interesting for obviously many, many reasons. And this messaging thing we're all talking about, I feel like enterprise is in a different world altogether. I was at the IBM Accelerator in Israel 2 weeks ago, and I said, if I run the accelerator, what are you guys using to communicate? At the Google Accelerator, this is Google. And yet the mentors get an email with a Google Doc with the name of their startup that they're mentoring, and they get to Google, and then there's 500 startups there, and I have no idea how to find them, start up, and I need to literally say, who here is, and I find them, and then I set with them, and then they say, okay, now we need to follow up, and I say, okay, ask him to this is Google, why can't we just talk, you know, it's a real problem. And I think that, you know, IBM, it's all these guys way back, and they said to me, when we were talking about Zula, and they started, so what's your encryption? And I said, and Jacob always said, and it's spot on, encryption, I can send you an email, you can forward it wherever you want. Where are you stuck? You're like, so the question is, are they ever going to get there? And how far are they? I mean, is enterprise really going to be truly, you know, democratized or brought up to speed with the consumer when it comes to communication and messaging?
I don't know.
That is absolutely not allowed. You have thoughts on this. I know you do.
What do I know? I mean, look, some people didn't used to have Macs in their office and they brought them in, and some people are going to say, yeah, we should use Zula, or we should use whatever, no name brand competitor, Slack. And is that going to happen? Perhaps. It's, you know, is it going to be, if it's useful and the employees find out about it and they say, this is really helping us get things done,
That's an interesting
then yeah, the company's going to bring it in and their hands will be forced and all that.
Completely agree. The employees will use these things. That's not my question. There's no question, right? Bring your own devices. The question is, will Intel ever say to their IBM or say to their employees, use whatever, communicate? Yes, talk encryption, all those things are fine, but are they ever really going to be able to use one of these third-party apps that we're all using, living on? Are they going to ever use them? Are they always going to be stuck?
Are you talking about using, or are you talking about implementing them and actually people following through with them? Because as we spoke about earlier, is that, you know, how do I get my employees to use one single application? And in the 5-6 years that I've been doing this, it's been impossible, because everybody has their own flavor, their own appetite about what they like. So so one comment also on one other thing. When you talk about enterprise, what number are we talking? How many employees? When I hear enterprise, I think it's 10,000.
The difference between, you know, IBM and the smaller. I mean, what's the fundamental difference? I'm asking here.
No, I mean when we talk about an enterprise solution, I'm more interested in. And I think a lot of people are here also. I think we're interested in small business solutions. You know, 15, 20 employees or less. Those are products that I think, you know, people will eat up. And I think there's a need for that.
For sure, I 100% agree. I was specifically asking not about what we're focused on today, but more about that other world, you know, of the enterprises and how far they are. I think they're far, but I would love to know, are they ever going to come around and start using these tools? Because again, it's 2014, 15 in a second, and like they're stuck in. And again, you know, Outlook has its place in the world, but at the end of the day, there's so many more advanced tools out there, whether it's, you know, specifically mobile or, you know, the ability to cross-platform. And they're just not there, and you can't fight it forever. You just can't, in my opinion.
So I have a lot of experience in enterprise, and mostly big enterprise, not the small enterprise. So, you know, I invented this thing, you know, this scanner, Stop and Shop, and it was impossible to get anyone to even think about implementing it, because we had to get the CIO engaged, the marketing people engaged, you know, so without having the CEO of the company pushing it, you know, you have to champion it. The problem is that in most of these cases, technology is controlled by the CIO, and the CIO only ever gets fired for not ordering IBM or for having a data breach. So the first thing they're worried about, and that's why they ask you about encryption, because the only thing they care about is data breach. So in having...
Is that relevant though?
Of course it's relevant, because that's how they get fired. TJ Maxx, you know, the CIO got fired when there was a data breach. You know, every single you know, hospital, the CIO got fired because there was data breach. They all get fired.
Is it possible? My question, of course, it's relevant. I mean, my question is, can you really live behind a firewall? Can you really? I mean, again, email, right?
Well, that's why I think we're successful. We managed, because of our experience in security, and we actually had some Israeli hackers helping us, you know, build a very secure app. And it's got to be secure enough so that this guy from the NSA had to try to break our app, and he couldn't do it. So, you know, that's the number one. They wouldn't even talk to us without first having that level of security. So,
use email? I'm curious. In the
of course, we
organization,
use email, but the security that, you know, around, you know, shopping, credit cards, and around HIPAA, patient information is quite different than, so in my field, right, in the area of healthcare or retail, the security has different than, yes, we can use email, but when it comes to you seeing my blood results, I'll sue you if you saw my blood results without permission. So.
I was on the board of a company, Pivot, which we eventually sold to the CME in the sort of securities and trading space. And it was a successful investment, but it was always a challenge to get enterprises to adopt this IM platform that was compliant, security safe, etc. And meanwhile, people were using AIM rampantly several years earlier until it got banned. And you had several venture-backed startups go into the space of sort of IM compliance. In fact, FaceTime, the name FaceTime that Apple used was bought from a company called FaceTime, which was doing IM compliance in the enterprise. It's very hard to get real ramp up and widespread adoption in enterprises of consumer apps on a secure basis. And Yammer was successful, but I don't know what their ultimate user or penetration numbers were. I mean, it was successful certainly as an investment. But it is challenging because you need the security, and I think there's always going to be this battle. And even I think when the next generation of CIOs rises to the fore, of the ones who are today, sort of 20, 25, 30 years old, and then become the CIO, so they've grown up in a very different digital environment, right? But then they're going to be the ones responsible for locking down the enterprise, right? So they're going to have a different perspective, right? It's like the player who then goes to, who goes to the side of management and has to then negotiate contracts with players, right?
So I want to ask a question, a little bit broader view on just generally the mobile, app landscape. It's interesting because we have unintentionally I'd say different elements of the ecosystem on this panel. We got the press, like a big business guy, medical, and investors, all different. And then the answer to this question is going to be different for all four of you. The question is about traction, right? Tomorrow I make an app. How do I even think about the numbers that we're seeing, with apps like Snapchat or Facebook or any of these things? What are some tips that you have for young entrepreneurs to try to get traction in this crazy world? There's so much noise, right? Obviously, you go open the app store and search for anything, and there's 500 results, right? So if I have an app, and it could be the greatest app in the world, how do I even begin to get traction besides pitching and today over at the end?
So can I chime in here a second? And I see a lot of startups coming to my office for some advice. And what a lot of startups, I think, they don't understand traditional PR, and I'm a pretty big advocate of that. They have this notion that they're going to build this app in their basement, and it could be the greatest app in the world, and it could have the functionality, it could have all the bells and whistles. But at the end of the day, if they don't have the proper marketing initiatives behind them, it's going to be shelved there forever. And this, how many times have I heard, oh, well, we're just going to go viral. I don't even know what that means. And I don't even, well, I asked, well, what's your marketing plan? Well, we're going to go viral. And they looked at me like, well, of course,
At the risk of whatever I don't want to defend. My answer that I get from startups is, what's your marketing strategy? You get on TechCrunch. Literally, the people said that.
Okay, but what happens? Okay, right.
Is that hard to do? Because it seems like they'll write it.
So the approach that I've been taking with a lot of the startups that I've been working with is try to tap into traditional PR, because everyone's lining up to get a review from you. From
TechCrunch. Ari's a master at traditional PR. We didn't say this before, but guys on like Fox and NBC every single day on TV. It's ridiculous. I don't even know, unbelievable.
You're wrong for room and sesame.
No, it's true. Traditional PR, obviously.
It's a balance, but thank you, Hill. So the startups that I've been working with trying to influence is for them to understand the value of traditional brick and mortar PR, because you got to differentiate yourself. So they're all lining up. They're all trying to get in the door with TechCrunch and Mashable and VentureBeat and Giggle, and it's boring.
Business Insider.
Sorry, and business, and it's not boring, by the way. It's there you go. But how do these startups differentiate amongst 14,000 other apps that are getting out there? And I think it's from a marketing perspective, I've been really having them think about it. It's not so much, when they tell me they're great, they tell me their idea. I said, it's a great idea now. Now tell me how you're going to market it. And they said, you know, and the same answer, the well, it's going to go viral, I'm going to push it through Facebook. And I said, look, I said, the conversation's over. So come back to me when you actually have a real concrete plan, not a pie in the sky plan for marketing. I said, almost think about that first, and then work your way backward. What's that?
What's the answer? What if Ari Zoltan says to me, what's your marketing plan? In 3 sentences, what should the answer be that would satisfy?
No, you're embarrassing me in front of all these.
I know you got this answer. I know you got this answer.
I would say that it's every single part of the marketing plan is one piece of the pie. For instance, people forget about traditional radio. They forget about TV. Yeah, they get the blog, but how about all the different components? People talk about social media. You know, a lot of the stuff that people talk about is very fluffy. It's all about the implementation, and it's not a single marketing vertical that's going to do it for you. I promise you, if you get in touch with every single blog from here to there, it's not going to work. But let me see a profile on Mashable, a spot on Fox News, a radio hit on ABC in the morning. Let me see you hitting up every single piece of the media. The key component is that it's about consistency. One-hit wonder. I've had friends that come to me and say, oh, you know, can you give me a spot on Fox? I said, I said, no. Come back to me again. I said, no. And I said, okay, I'll get you on Fox. I said, I promise you it's going to do nothing for you. He said, no. I get one spot. That's it, you know? So sure enough, I get him, I get him a spot, and he calls me up. He's like, Ari, you saved my life. I've got so much traffic to my site. I said, hang up the phone. I said, call me in 3 days. He calls me and goes, what do you do to my company? Like, the phone stopped ringing. I said I said, the point is that one-hit wonder won't do anything for you. I think the key is consistency, and it's not just about social media. It's hitting up the other verticals of media.
And whatever goes like that, right?
And that's why hitting up the media consistency is key.
I mean, I would say it's all about the product. And not to take anything away from PR, but one follows the other. And you know, the PR won't work if the product doesn't delight. And I mean, that's the fundamental backbone to any of these products, and it has to do with different demographics. What delights one demographic, you know, teenagers with Snapchat doesn't really resonate with an older demographic, and you know, vice versa. And so I think when we sit down with a company, you know, when you talk about marketing, I mean, we're really looking, particularly at the earliest stages, about how the management team thinks about iterating on a product and getting, you know, small user groups to give feedback and refine that product until you begin to, you know, it's like kindling, until you begin to, you know, see some sparks. But, you know, it's easy to look at the successful companies and presume that the engineering team sat in a room day one, nailed it in that first strategy session, built it, and launched it, and whoosh, off to the races. It just doesn't happen that way. And we read headlines about successes, forget about the failures, I'm talking about the successes. The amount of refinement and change and iteration that goes on is not transparent to any of us, but it goes on. I can tell you it's gone on with a particular company who's hosting this, right? So,
Amen. I'm curious about that specific topic. It's a very interesting discussion to have about the connection between product and marketing. Because obviously they're connected. You can market your butt off, and the product's not going to get it. However, what are your thoughts on the importance of a brand today? In other words, you know, if you have a strong brand and the product will align with the brand in the future, you're saying until you have a great product, you shouldn't, you know, spend marketing dollars. Or you're saying, I'm curious your thoughts on that.
I'll give a real short answer. Yeah, I think you should wait. You may decide to change the name. I mean, there's so many things you may decide.
You can wind up like a Klinkle. Go out with a whole bunch of hype. Hopefully you're not an investor.
No, I'm not even familiar with it, so they never pitched us as far as I know.
Yeah, but you can go out with a lot of hype. You have the brand, you have the marketing, you don't have the product, and you keep waiting for the product, and then it turns out a disaster.
Let me sort of comment on that, because I totally agree with that. You know, it took us 2 years of hard work and refinement and totally changed the product before we even showed it to the first hospital. And so my experience has been that, first of all, we have to align ourselves with strategics. Like in our case, we aligned ourselves with Yale New Haven Hospital, for the smartest caregivers and the CMIO and everyone. I mean, without them, I wouldn't have been able to move the product. So user groups, like you said, people, giving us feedback on our products. And then in terms of, you just have to be able to have cash enough to be able to last till you've actually gone to market. That's the biggest challenge. But
I want to talk about another company that I think fits across what you guys are all talking about is Dollar Shave Club. Like good product, it makes sense, it comes out. And they did,
Say what it is.
so it's a subscription service essentially. I think it's, it's $1 a month essentially. You get a razor and it's much cheaper than Gillette, which you go to the store and you're
True story, by the way, he's not joking.
knocked on your butt. And you can't believe how much a razor is. And it's like, if you get the 2-blade or the 3-blade one, maybe it's $6 a month or something like that. But it winds up being a pretty good deal. It just gets delivered to your house. You don't have to think about it. It's no biggie. They came out of the gate with this great YouTube video advertising it. It was sort of I think it was like a single shot, or it felt like a single shot video. The CEO is walking around and it's like, our blades are effing great. And it's really funny and it's great. It goes nuts in terms of going viral. The guy's message literally probably was, I'm gonna go viral, and then he did it. And it had something, 1 million views, something crazy like that. And I remember talking to him a week afterwards and said, how many people did you get to sign up? That video's got like millions of views. He's like, 10,000. And that's a lot, but that's not a lot compared to 1 million, And to your point of being consistent and going across the brand, now if you listen to some, I think ESPN Sports Radio, I was listening to that, and they had Dollar Shave Club ads. And it's, okay, you start in the blog, you start in that TechCrunch venture beat and all that area, and you have the YouTube video that goes viral, but that's not who your ultimate demo is. So you go, who needs to shave? Well, idiots who are listening to ESPN Sports Radio at 7 in the morning. Like, that's where we're gonna go. And maybe it's not the hip way to do it because it's not another YouTube video, but they did do another YouTube video, which also did really well. And so I think that's a company that had a brand, had an identity, came out with the ads, but then didn't say, like, we're just going to be word of mouth, we're going to be webby. It's smart, it's expanding and figuring out where it works.
How are they doing that?
I haven't talked to them in a while, but I assume well.
I've seen them all over. I've seen them all over the place.
You get a free subscription?
No, I'm kidding. I don't need that $2 a month or whatever.
No, but that's you brought up an interesting point. You went into your car and you heard it on the radio again, so it wasn't just
Probably
a
on
blog.
my phone, but whatever.
Whatever. But the point is that you keep hearing the messaging, and that's the value of messaging. You hear it from over and over and over.
Big believer in consistency. Even, by the way, on these kind of platforms that everyone talks about all the time, social media, even on social media, consistency is everything, right? Whatever your strategy is, you're doing it once. Whatever, you're writing blog posts, write a blog post once a week, you're going to achieve nothing. I'm going to come to your blog, I'll come tomorrow, there's nothing there. On the next day, there's nothing there. All right. So you order the blog post once, that's, if you do it every day, and I come there the next day, and the next day, I'm going to bookmark your site. And then I'm going to get it to know your brand, and then eventually I'm going to turn to a conversion.
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt, but you actually had someone asked a question. Someone said, well, do you wait until your product is completely refined and perfect before you go to market, or is there a way to do it in tandem? And I think the answer is, I think waiting, especially in today's day and age, I think is a little bit dangerous because the barrier of entries today in developing products and internet companies are so low. You have internet bandwidth and a couple of engineers. You could bang out any we could bang out an internet company or an internet applications. But I think if you manage expectations, and many times you'll see